All right, and we're recording. So thanks everyone who's able to join live and those watching the recording for our Service Fabric Community Q&A number 64. We have Antonio and many others from the Service Fabric team here presenting today. A quick reminder that today's call is being recorded. We will actually share the recording afterwards to both the YouTube channel and the Azure Connection Programs community. We'll be monitoring the chat for any questions or comments throughout the session, so feel free, as well as feel free to raise your hand and chime in throughout. Without further ado, Antonio, go ahead, take it away.
Hey, so hey everyone, it's a small audience, so feel free to interject throughout or ask questions. But I'm from the security side of Service Fabric, which is security fundamentals, but also things like app secret management experience, cluster secret management experience, and kind of identity on Azure. So in 9.0, we brought kind of a new feature experience for app secret management for MI-enabled services. So I'm going to talk through kind of what your options are for application secret management in Service Fabric, and then kind of tail it off with a demo of our latest experience. Let me share. Can everyone see my screen okay?
I see it.
Yep. Okay. Let's all right, so application secret management, and really what this means is the secrets that your application uses to authenticate, to authorize other services, storage accounts or databases. It's how you can leverage Service Fabric to deliver those secrets to your application at runtime, so it can then use those secrets for whatever purpose it has. The classic model here, and likely a model that a lot of you guys use, is encrypted parameters. And it's one of the first kind of available experiences in Service Fabric. And the idea here is you take your secret, whatever it is, you create an encryption certificate whose keys will be used to encrypt that secret. So that's not there in your manifest, it's not there in your deployment pipeline. That certificate will be deployed onto your VMs, and then your application at the runtime will use that secret to decrypt. Sorry, we'll use the certificate to decrypt the secret and use it. Here is kind of what that looks like. We have a command invoke Service Fabric encrypt text and decrypt text. You can see this is a cutout from an application manifest where that encrypted text is here. It's labeled to be encrypted, and then here in your service, you're calling the decrypt API to use that certificate, the encryption certificate, to decrypt the secret and use it. Some advantages is this is kind of just the app parameter model that you guys are used to. It's available everywhere out of the box, but you need to take that cert, you need to deploy it to your VMs. This thing, though it's an easy way to get into secret delivery, it has a few disadvantages. One, all you see is that blob, and that blob doesn't have any metadata. It doesn't say which certificate is encrypting it. It doesn't say what version is the secret overdue to be rotated, is the secret valid, and the secret and cert, they're all coupled, right? Generally, you upgrade an application, you'd have to upgrade that application when you need to rotate the secret, when you need to rotate the certificate. For example, if it's close to expiry. Moving on. Service Fabric also provides an optional system service called Central Secret Service. And Central Secret Service essentially a stateful database that's available to you, the cluster operator, to store secrets. It has an API, which you can use to manage secrets, their versions and metadata, and put and pull secrets. On the app model side, there's a way to specify an app parameter as a secret. This is the secret metadata object and actual version value. And here you can see an example of putting that value. This is for clusters that have CSS enabled. Advantages still available on standalone. With this, you get central management of the encryption certificate rather than per app upgrades for encryption cert rotation. You get metadata and versioning. You always know which secret and which version your app is using by looking at your app model. And central management of those secrets could be an advantage or disadvantage, kind of depending on your organization, your team. Still need to deploy, update your applications to rotate secrets. And you still need to get those secrets into CSS, which means some operator or some service is provisioning those secrets into the cluster. Likewise, each app can declare any secrets that are in the store and get them when they deploy. Okay, in Azure now, we have manage identity for applications, for Service Fabric applications, which is something that came a couple years ago. And now your application can have an identity in Azure and use that identity to authenticate to other services. And in many cases, your app can go directly to the service it needs to talk to, whether it be SQL or a storage account. Though in some cases, it still may need keys or something which can't be authenticated directly using MI. In those cases, that secret may be stored in Key Vault, and you can use the application MI to go to Key Vault. So here I have an example of some app code doing that, using manage identity credential, and then going to get the secret here. Advantages of MI are always that no certs are necessary. The identity, the access to the identity is inherent in the architecture. Auto rotation is achievable from service code if you try to enable it. For example, a service may choose to periodically look in the Key Vault for updated secrets, in which case it's possible to have auto rotation of service code. As the secret can get created in the Key Vault and hence does not need to be exposed to an operator, to the pipeline. It can go directly to the application when it's needed. And since MIs can be applied at a service level, app level and service level isolation of secrets is possible, you need to have an ARM deployed application with MI. You need to have MI enabled in the cluster. The disadvantage being there's no safety here if you've enabled auto rotation, in the sense that different services across different UDs may go and fetch new secrets. And if that secret's bad, you don't get rollback, roll forward in a safe manner. And in large deployments, we found that Key Vault may throttle. For example, if you have many replicas, many instances coming up at the same time, each pinging Key Vault may throttle those deployments. Everyone still with me? I'm going through it quickly. In each of these, there's a link too for more information, kind of how to enable the scenario. And I'm kind of just walking this through to be the reference for all the options available to you guys. For the next is Key Vault references, which is kind of our answer to MI, basically like our kind of experience around using secrets in Key Vault, using app MI, as opposed to kind of the naive, use my MI, go to Key Vault, pull my secrets. Key Vault references is something we brought in that looks a lot like secret references for Central Secret Service, and it's similar because it uses Central Secret Service behind the scenes. And in these, you declare your secret using its Key Vault URL. An example of this would be, for example, this is how you would declare it. as opposed to say secret reference where you would declare the name in the vol in CSS and then the version you've given it. And this way you just specify a secret in the vault. And we will handle behind the scenes, use the application's managed identity to go to Key Vault and fetch that secret on behalf of the application, and then activate the application with that secret. Advantages here are kind of the same. You get essentially managed secrets in the Key Vault. You get essentially managed encrypted certificate with CSS. No app code changes are needed, especially if you're using like something like encrypted parameters or very minimal app changes are needed. You're always activated with the right secret, and you can expect to have the same secret for the lifetime of the process. Since it goes directly from Key Vault into the cluster, you don't have exposure to secret operator type. And since CSS is used behind the scenes, those secrets are cached from the vault. So generally, even large deployments with many instances of an application will only be a couple requests to the Key Vault. Still need to rotate your secrets to give them a new instance of the secret, and you still need to manage an encryption certificate, which is the central secret service encryption certificate. Okay, lastly, so what we brought in 9.0 is what we call managed Key Vault references. And the basic concept here is that rather than declaring in your service a very specific secret instance in your vault, as here, you simply declare the class of secrets, the bag of all the secret objects. And Service Fabric will handle on rotations in the vault, fetching the new secret, the new version, and will handle starting an application upgrade to converge to the new secret. And I can demo that now. So here I have a cluster. I have my app deployed. And let's look real quick at, this is the resource definition of my application. So here I have parameters specified, and you can see that they specify kind of a bag of secrets, the high level secret in the vault, of which there can be many versions. And I deploy that and it has a managed identity, which is needed to go and authenticate to the vault. So here you can see I've declared these parameters as managed Key Vault references, similarly what I would do for Key Vault references or encrypted parameters or secret store references. And we can see that as deployed, the service actually has versioned references. So we handle at the time of deployment, translating the versionless references to the current reference that's in the vault. So we can see here that we're deployed with 140, which is, yeah, the current version. Sure. So if I wanted to create a new version, here, we get FC1 is the new version with my new secret. The idea behind managed Key Vault references is that Service Fabric should handle going to the vault, pulling the vault periodically, looking for new secrets if they're available on behalf of the application, and if there are, kickstarting an application upgrade to converge to the new secret. And I'll give it a second to find that upgrade. The advantages here are that there's auto rotation compatible. So your secrets can rotate automatically and your applications can get those secrets automatically while still having rolling upgrades, which means a bad secret should fail and roll back. And you can't bring down, for example, all the instances of your service at the same time. But today you still need to manage that CSS encryption certificate. Let's hop back here. I think it's watching every 3 minutes, so Hopefully an upgrade kickstarts here. While we wait for this, wanted to open up for questions, and you can ask specifically about this feature, app secret management in general, or we can go into kind of other secret related topics. Go ahead with.
Sure, I've got a couple of them. I guess you may have just answered this one. What's the lag time between a new version being published to the Key Vault and Service Fabric picking it up?
Sure. So the default, as in if you kind of just follow the guide and set this up, would be 15 minutes. The way to think about how this kind of works structurally is CSS uses the app's identity on behalf of the app's identity, goes periodically to the vault and polls for new secrets. So that interval in which it polls is configurable. 15 minutes is the default. In my case, for the demo, I have it set for 3 minutes, just so we're not sitting around waiting for it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so okay, so that makes sense. Is it something that's configurable?
Yeah. So I'll go briefly. This should be in the article.
Sure, just one of the many config options.
So here we have secret monitoring enabled, which is what enables this feature. This is a flag right now, but probably in an upcoming version, this is going to become default to true. And here is where that interval is specified. So this is 180 seconds, which is 3 minutes. The default will be 15 minutes, but this can become, as you please.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Also, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to, since this upgrade started, I just want to show briefly that currently the service is on 140 is the OID, which corresponds to the old version, and the upgrade, which is coming through, is bringing it to FC1, which is the new current version. Yep. Go ahead, Whit.
Right. Yeah. So the encrypted secret store, I noticed that the manifest listed a thumbprint. Will that ever switch to just a common name instead of thumbprint?
So the yes, no. So right now, the secret encryption certificate, which you use for Central Secret Service, is declared by thumbprint, which means that you have to periodically rotate it. There's no kind of auto rotation experience there. That's something we're hoping to bring in the nearest future. But it won't look like common name based declarations. That's because kind of when you declare something by common name, you're basically saying I'll accept an entire class of certificates and I'll validate them off some shared characteristic of them. For example, like that they root to a trusted CA, or they all have the same issuer thumbprint. Since an encryption cert needs to have that specific key set to protect and like unprotect, it won't be common name. What we'll do is we'll either bring where that secret itself is a key in Key Vault, like a managed key. One of these guys. So you'll declare into manifest as a managed key, and then you'll get auto rotation here, which you can set up, and we'll handle behind the scenes auto rotating that secret and re-encrypting the store. Or potentially we'll bring it as Service Fabric just manages the own key. So it generates it, it manages its lifetime, it renews it and stuff. And it happens behind the scenes. It will likely be one of the two. But yeah, I mean, that's a sticking point, and and that's why I point out here in the disadvantages.
Fair enough. Is this all supported by managed Service Fabric today?
Managed clusters or
Yeah, managed clusters. Like, is there, there's not really a whole lot of configuration flags you can just kind of say enable these things. So is it just one of those that's enabled by default?
Yeah, so in managed clusters, you still can turn on these features at the cluster level, which is things like turning on the managed identity token service to allow app management and turning on CSS. And then everything past that, once those are in place, is app management, and those experiences are the same. So
Okay.
yes.
How do you get the certificates onto the managed store since you don't have direct access to the VMs?
How do you get the certificate?
Yeah,
onto...
the encrypted certificate store, the certificate used for that, and yes, any others. How do you
Oh, yeah.
install those initially since you don't have access to them?
Sukanya, do you know that? Mike, do you know the managed cluster model?
I think Mike might be better to answer that. Mike, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll link you with. It's the same way. I need to learn offline, and Abe will help take this offline too. But it should be similar fashion to how we have document today,
Okay.
where we give the nodes access via managed identities to reach and grab the keys.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Which we're still. Oh, sorry, Antonio.
Oh, deploying the certificates would be the same process you would do to deploy app certificates or your cluster certificate. So I mean, generally in the actual definition,
Yeah, but I guess you don't do a cluster certificate on a managed Service Fabric, right? It's just
correct.
done
Well,
for you.
the cluster certificate is managed by us, meaning the product group of Service Fabric, right? We actually manage for them, but for the customer, but the client certificate obviously is owned by the client, right?
Yeah.
This is separate.
As far as,
this would more like, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, as far as it actually working with SFMC is something that we'd have to test and confirm.
Yeah, if you can push Fabric settings to an SFMC cluster, and you can deploy certificates to your scale set, then you should be golden. Maybe that's something we might have to check.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look at the doc. I think this makes sense.
The
gap to a managed cluster. Yeah, that makes sense.
The particulars that we may still need to close on with, there may be a feature gap, is we may need to support the bucket as Antonio's referencing it, that one layer up in the model. Right now, as the documentation shows, that we support the specific version of the secret. So that still is a gap potentially we need to close. Just validate, make sure.
Gotcha. Does I guess, especially for this deploy the application secrets, I guess it covers how to install the certificate. Can you pull certificates out of the key vault using this instead of just secrets?
Yeah, sure. So if you, for example, this is this cluster cert. This cluster cert has a few ways of describing itself. One is the secret identifier.
Mhm.
So if I took that and I used that as a key vault reference or a managed key vault reference, I would basically get from key vault a base 64 encoded text version of the certificate, including the private key. So your application could then use that. It kind of depends what your application's written in. For example, like a .NET app could then just load that into an X509 certificate too and use it. Yeah. So
Cool.
so there's no kind of differentiation. This can be used for certificates too. But then there's kind of a separate, in this PowerPoint, I didn't focus on certificates specifically because certificates kind of have an old model, which is, deploy the cert directly to the VM. And then just use it, kind of get the handle, the classic Windows way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
cool.
can be used for certs.
Yeah. Okay, and last one, I promise. Is there any hope for local MSI support for this while debugging with the local instance?
Yeah, it's...
Because I guess the problem I see is now great, I've got all this logic in here to use this very specialized thing, but now I can't, to just completely break locally.
Yeah, I would say this. That's kind of been the question since MI came out. And we understand the gaps, but we have not gone and enabled that experience. And it's not looking great for the short-term future.
That'd be
Just
real
because
cool
of-
if it looked cooler.
Yeah.
Just because
No,
it
I
makes
mean-
the local debugging really painful.
I agree. And I know because I have to do it too. You know, like when I write these apps, like, if I write a demo app, I have to deal with the same thing of sometimes testing with an Azure deployment.
Mhm. I guess how do you address that? Because at least so far I've generally tried to do it by take the app and essentially rip out all the service fabric pieces. Use the debug compiler flags so that it just runs as a not service fabric thing, so it can run locally, do all the stuff through the service fabric MI, and then then I'm just using different bits when it's actually in service fabric. But that's not great either, right?
Yeah, just real quickly, there's I mean, obviously, like if we bring in experience, it's going to be a bit more straightforward.
Mhm.
But today the Azure SDK kind of has this concept of a managed identity credential.
Yeah.
And it has kind of it has another credential. I think it's called default credentials or something. Which will go
the
through
change credential. Yeah.
Yeah, and it will go through and it will try a bunch of different types of credentials, looking for one that it has. So if you're using this in your code, generally you could just strip out these bits, the declarations of the MI,
Sure.
and then rely on the fallbacks here to get access to the vault. There's kind of like a small fundamental gap in a sense of there is no managed identity on your dev box. It's something that only exists in a realm of Azure resources.
Sure.
So generally the solution's going to be, and even a solution we bring is going to look like using some other identity available locally, like your creds, like your developer creds, and just kind of making it look like an MI.
Exactly. Because because other apps are able to just pull the one out of Visual Studio.
Yeah. So right now, that I would say that is your best bet, and anything that we bring is going to look like, hey, give us some identity we can use, and we'll make it look like the MI to your service.
Sure. Yeah, I guess just as a point of feedback, then it'd be really cool if the little manifest piece that you have to remove during local debug, then it'd be really cool if that were flaggable in some way to say, is enabled or not, so that if I'm doing something locally, I can just set that as a local parameter instead of manually removing it. Because I guess, the great fear is, okay, I checked in my code and I forgot to re-add it back. But anyway,
Okay.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, note it. Yeah, there's
Because
likely
moving the startup services out was great, because it says it's a separate file. If I don't include it, it's not doing any automag startup stuff. But stuff like that just doesn't quite work locally, but you need it in production. That'd be nice to be able to flag.
Yeah, I would say that, I mean, like the overall fact that you can't really do local debugging is an obvious gap that I think we've known about and we want to go fix. So it's something that we'll bring. When we do bring it, we may just bring kind of the full experience rather than kind of that little turn it on, turn it off.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, just because you turn it off, but then you don't really get the confidence to say that the MI parts of my application are actually going to work when I then go and put it up in Azure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if I turn off that section, then I've disabled the managed key vault reference pieces, and all the change stuff. So today it's just a real pain to remember to do all that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for feedback. Any other questions or comments or questions outside of key vault references and app secrets?
And I know we're at time, but if you guys actually have more security-based questions, we can definitely set up a follow-up and ask the folks from the security team to join in to answer more questions on it. So if you do have questions, feel free to unmute and ask them right now. If you want to follow up specifically for security, unmute to kind of voice your vote out there. So let us know. We're okay with either one.
And I'll quickly chime in. Team, there were 2 questions in the chat. I want to make sure that we address those for the recording. One from Ronan and one from Abe. Did we get to both of those?
You got mine already. Thank you.
Great.
And Ronan, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Or did we answer it already?
I can address them both.
Yeah, Abhay said his question's already answered. Ronan's question was, while waiting, it's a good time to ask, how do we change the default 3-minute refreshing time?
Yeah, so that would be an override to your cluster definition.
Answer this.
Sorry, say it again.
This was answered.
He said
answered
you've
Oh.
already answered it.
Okay, got it. This is okay, yeah, because I showed it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much then. Cesar, maybe you want to kind of wrap it up?
Actually, one
Awesome.
more question then, just real fast to sneak it in here.
Go for it.
All right, I guess 2 more. Managed Service Fabric, any hope of Linux support?
Right now, that's not been discussed right now. We'll get back to you if we do decide to support it.
Great. It'd be nice just because it's so much cheaper.
Okay, got it.
So
Thanks for the feedback on that.
be huge. And then also Windows Server 2022. It wasn't clear from the last release notes. Is it, I guess, was the issue fixed with the whatever the lingering issue was, or is it still not recommended to use that yet?
Are you talking in context of SFMC?
Just Service Fabric as a whole. Juho had something about in HCP. I can't find his thread, but yeah, I guess Windows Server 2022, I guess, wasn't quite completely supported yet. I was waiting on something from the 9.0 release notes, and it wasn't, I guess, addressed in the release, the first refresh. So I just want to see, yeah, is it supported yet?
Couldn't talk to it.
Yeah,
Sukanya?
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sukanya. I couldn't talk to it. Go ahead.
I do believe we made a few fixes for it in CU1. So I thought there was something in the release notes that kind of mentioned towards that, but we'll circle back to that if it doesn't. To answer your question, yes, we're trying to make it available, but we may have to kind of circle back for a full functionality overview, but at least we're trying to unblock most customers. In case it is not detailed out in the first refresh, we will make sure we have a better note towards that for in the second refresh. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if I understood it, it was, gosh, wasn't it like TLS 1.2 or something? You just simply had to
1.3.
disable that. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
If you
so there were some
disabled that,
certificate
everything just
related
worked.
issues with that. We've fixed those, or at least we've put in a fix that will kind of address those. And that's why it's kind of something that will work, but we still need to be able to support TLS 1.3 completely end to end, and that's going to require a lot more work. So we're not completely committing
Sure.
to doing that in a month or so, and between the next refresh.
Sure, but at least if you just disable that on 2022, it there's no known issue with just running Service Fabric there.
Yeah,
Until
but
otherwise
we
said.
we still need to do some additional testing to make sure that we've kind of got it all covered, and that's why I said I will definitely make sure that the second refresh at least has some information towards it. But there's additional testing that we're constantly doing to ensure that we've kind of covered all our bases, because we've already kind of released it once. We've hit some issues because when we released it, and so we want to make sure that we do a complete and thorough job before we actually publish
course.
the notification. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Problem. Any other questions?
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to love these questions, keep them coming. We get a lot of feedback because of these questions. So even if you do have something offline, please let us know. I've mentioned this before. We don't always respond back because we get a lot of inputs, but we do make sure that we review every question that is posted. So please continue to post questions on GitHub. Please let us know if you have thoughts and feedbacks and suggestion. We do monitor them very, very carefully and get inputs from them. So thank you all. I really appreciate your joining in today. And I'll hand it to Cesar to wrap up.
Perfect. Yeah, this was a feedback-filled session for sure. Thank you, Antonio and team. Thanks everyone that was able to join live. As always, really quickly in the chat, we dropped 2 links. One, if you could please share your 30-second feedback on today's session. Let us know how today's session went and anything else you want to hear about from the Service Fabric team, as well as there's an opportunity to share directly what you want to hear more about from the Service Fabric team. So both of those links are in the chat, or if you're watching the recording on the thread where you found this recording. So thank you everyone for joining live. And one more time, Zucania, Antonio, I'll hand it back to you to close us out, and we'll head out from here.
Sounds good. And special thank you to Antonio. We didn't give him too much of a heads up, so really did a great job. So thank you, Antonio.
Thanks all.
One thing before you leave, if I may, it's regarding the feedback in the future meeting. I would love if you can bring more about internal stuff, architecture, and not only the client level of how to use.
Can you explain that a little bit more? When you say internal, what exactly are you looking for?
I like to know what is behind the skin as well. I'm not speaking specifically about Azure function. I'm not talking about a good example for me. It will be SQL Server, which I always love to learn about the internals, what is going in the under the skins, and not only how to use it.
Sure,
So
I get that. So the reason, so let me put it in a different way.
it's
So
a general request, not specifically for Azure function, but as well, it's a general request regarding the community connect, all the channel.
right. So that's what I was trying to answer, Ronan. So I think your request is valid from your side. I completely get it. But there are 2 parts to that. One is Service Fabric in general is a really large space. So if there's something specific that you'd like to deep dive into, let us know and we're happy to actually set it up. And the second thing is sometimes we can't always make every aspect of the internal public. So we do kind of pick and choose certain areas which are made available, because whatever is available as a functionality to customers is what we can deep dive into. So we're happy to do whatever we can. We just definitely want to understand if there's a specific area that you want to deep dive into, rather than have a general bucket of deep dive. And we're happy to kind of follow up on that and set it up.
I will give you the same sentence, if this is okay, if we have time. I will give you the same sentence that I'm saying to everyone when I lecture about internal. Understanding the internal, it's not only for theory, but it helps us to improve the external. What I mean is that, okay, you say you focus on the client level, client layer, which makes sense. But if I know how something is working under the skins, so I can improve performance, for example. Again, SQL Server, it's a great example. I can give specific sample, like my last lecture was about how to parse the SQL Server log file. The binary log file, to read the binary log file and understand it and parse it. So you can say, hey, this is only internal, it has no meaning for real life, but this is not true. And this is what I show in the lecture, is that by knowing how to parse the log file, I can actually, for example, one of the sample, I can restore specific row which was deleted from a table without need to restore all the file or all the database. So this is only one example. So knowing about the internals gives us a lot of power for the day-to-day use, even if it's look like this.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid feedback, and we'll try to bring in more internals in future sessions. Thank you for the feedback.
I also shared a link in to a YouTube playlist that was made a while ago, where someone went through and interviewed a bunch of people on the Service Fabric team who explain a lot of the internal pieces. And there's one example of I don't know what he did, something with Event Hub, and he just goes through how Event Hub was built on top of Service Fabric. And there's a guy, I forget what his name is, but he does something with Event Hub and Service Bus, all the messaging stuff. And he recently published some PowerPoint docs that just really deep dive architectural walkthrough of how Event Hub and Service Bus are built on top of Service Fabric as well.
Okay, I will check the YouTube. Thanks. Any such information for me, I just like it. I love to wait to test it to know what we have.
Yep, I think that's great feedback, and thank you for sharing that link. Yeah, there are quite a few such sessions that we've done in the past, and happy to circle back and deep dive into some of these areas so that you have the internals, not just the usage. Thank you. All right, so that's pretty much all we have for today. Thank you all for joining in. Really appreciate your time and the feedback that you're giving. So we'll see you in the next session. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.